May 2026 at the Foro Italico. The mid-afternoon Roman sun is beating down on the red dirt, and the crowd is sitting in absolute silence. The world number two is standing just behind the baseline. She is a towering serving machine with a massive wingspan and an aura of pure baseline dominance. Yet she is completely bent over right now. She is gasping for air and desperately trying to catch her breath after only 45 minutes of competitive play. The player standing quietly on the other side of the net is not Iga Swiatek, it is Alex Eala. For years we have been conditioned to believe a very specific narrative about modern professional tennis. We are told that immense physical size and raw muscular power are the ultimate undisputed advantages. We are told that bigger always means better. But on that unforgiving red clay in Rome, that colossal physical frame suddenly became a fatal burden. This was not just a bad day at the office. This was not a temporary dip in form due to fatigue. It was a brutal and systematic exposure of a tactical flaw that has haunted elite European tennis academies for over a decade. A young player from the Philippines stepped onto the most demanding surface in the sport and completely dismantled the biological advantage of the European elite. How did she pull off this seemingly impossible upset? The answer has absolutely nothing to do with hitting the ball harder or running faster than her opponent. It is about a specific geometric nightmare that nobody saw coming. And the entire tennis establishment is terrified of what happens next. For a very long time, the red clay courts of Europe have been completely ruled by a single tactical blueprint. You know the exact player profile I am talking about because you see it dominating the tour every single week. These players are incredibly tall. They have massive arm levers and a center of gravity that sits extremely high off the ground. They are carefully engineered in high-performance training centers to hit heavy, flat ground strokes that skid deep into the court. They dictate every single point from the back of the baseline using sheer, unadulterated force. This physical archetype is designed to be an unbreakable shield. It is a biological fortress built to crush smaller players into total submission before the rally even reaches the fifth shot. Then you look closely at the biomechanical profile of Alex Eala. Her physical reality on the court is entirely different. She does not have the massive levers of a traditional tall European baseliner. She cannot rely on an overwhelming wingspan to bail her out of incredibly tough defensive positions. On paper, she should be completely blown off the court by the sheer weight and pace of those flat baseline bombs. The basic math of tennis dictates that the smaller player always loses a grueling war of attrition against a giant on a clay court. But the exact opposite is happening right now before our very eyes. Eala has found the absolute first crack in that legendary European armor. She realized a fundamental truth that coaches have ignored for years. She realized that the biggest weapon of these towering giants is also their most critical biological vulnerability. Their height is a trap. This discovery is currently sending a massive shockwave through the entire professional circuit. We are not just looking at a clever little strategy for one random match in Italy. We are watching a tectonic shift unfold in real time. This is a profound revelation that directly threatens to tear down the current top 10 structure of the sport. Think deeply about what this actually means for the future. If a smaller player can systematically break down a towering giant on the most physically demanding surface in the world, the entire power dynamic of tennis changes forever. Elite coaches are scrambling to find answers. Famous academies are quietly panicking behind closed doors. The terrifying collapse of these European legends is not starting from a breakdown in their rackets or a collapse in their mentality. The destruction is starting directly from their feet. If you are sitting there realizing just how massive this tactical shift is for the future of the sport, you belong with us. Make sure you officially become part of our community today because the specific way Eala exposes this physical flaw will completely change how you watch every single tennis match from now on. The real mystery is just beginning. Look at the technical breakdown tapes from the events leading up to the French Open. You will spot a deeply unsettling pattern. The established European titans do not crumble against Eala because of a power deficit. They fall apart because their physical equilibrium is completely shattered. Let us isolate a specific moment from a crucial quarter-final match. Listen closely to the violent scrape of the tennis shoes sliding across the crushed red brick. That distinct sound is usually the hallmark of a world-class clay court defender, gracefully moving into a perfect position. But pause the footage right at the exact moment of the slide. Look carefully at the physical posture of this 6-foot-tall European champion. We normally expect to see a rock-solid core and a perfectly balanced torso ready to unleash a massive counterattack. But right here in this frozen frame, the upper body is awkwardly leaning backward. The hips are totally out of alignment with the baseline. The racket head meets the yellow ball exactly 3 milliseconds too late. The entire kinetic energy transfer is dead on arrival. Now watch a second example from a different high-stakes match later in the same week. A seasoned Grand Slam finalist is tracking down a standard cross-court rally ball. She attempts her signature sliding recovery to stay in the point, but her massive frame wobbles uncontrollably on the dirt. She sends a weak defensive ball sailing wide into the doubles alley and then takes 4 agonizingly slow steps just to recover her court positioning. Her shoulders slump forward. She looks completely drained after just 20 minutes of physical play. This makes absolutely no sense at all. Are these elite giants suddenly forgetting how to move on clay? Is the surface somehow playing differently this year due to the weather? Did their legendary stamina just vanish overnight like a ghost? Absolutely not. These women are physical marvels of the modern sporting world. They possess the highest level of aerobic conditioning humanly possible. They employ entire teams of expensive physiotherapists and sports biomechanic experts to ensure their bodies can endure brutal 3-hour wars of attrition. They simply do not run out of gas in the very first set of a tennis match. So we are staring at a massive contradiction on the court. We have a towering athlete with unlimited endurance collapsing against a 19-year-old opponent who is significantly smaller in stature. The television commentators try to blame it on the afternoon heat or a bad tactical day at the office, but they are completely missing the real story unfolding in front of them. When a player is over 6 feet tall, their center of mass sits very high off the ground. Every single time they change direction on a slippery surface, they have to recruit massive amounts of muscle fiber just to stay upright and balanced. Normally, they handle this perfectly, but against Eala, something breaks the entire system. You see them bending at the waist instead of dropping their hips. You see their heads dipping far over their toes. This is a massive biomechanical red flag. It means their brain is telling their body to hit the ball, but their feet are not in the right place to execute the command. The neuromuscular connection is failing. The breakdown is happening on a microscopic level. The giants are swinging late on routine rally balls. Their footwork patterns are totally broken and out of sync. Their lungs are burning, and they cannot find their breath between points. But why exactly does a superior biological engine stall out so incredibly fast? The true cause of this physical destruction is not something you can easily see on a standard television broadcast. The answer is completely invisible to the untrained eye. The real secret does not live in horizontal movement. We always judge clay court prowess by how well a player runs from side to side along the baseline. We measure the speed of their lateral sliding and the explosive power of their wide defensive steps. But Eala completely flipped the script on the entire tennis establishment. She took the game and moved the battleground from the horizontal plane straight into the vertical plane. The fatal vulnerability of the tall European baseliner is their vertical strike zone. And Eala shatters that strike zone using a terrifying metric developed directly at the Rafael Nadal Academy in Spain. The weapon is pure rotational velocity. It is all about the exact revolutions per minute on her topspin forehand. At this elite academy, they do not just teach you how to hit the ball hard. They teach you how to manipulate the physics of the bounce. Imagine a visual data graph popping up on your screen right now. We have a standard heavy flat forehand from a typical European professional. The ball travels on a relatively linear path over the net. It crosses the tape and bounces predictably into the comfortable hip pocket of the opponent. Now overlay the data profile of the Eala forehand. The visual spike in RPM is absolutely staggering to look at. She generates over 3,200 revolutions per minute on a standard rally ball. When a ball spinning that fast hits the crushed brick, it creates severe friction. The ball grips the dirt and launches into the air like a rocket. This is exactly where the geometry becomes a living nightmare for the giants. A player who stands over 6 feet tall has a naturally high center of gravity. They want to strike the ball at waist level where their long arms can generate maximum leverage and effortless power. But that massive topspin from Eala forces the heavy ball to explode upward off the dirt. The giant is suddenly forced to hit the ball at chest height or even up near their shoulders. Have you ever tried to swing a heavy object with maximum force while your arms are lifted up by your ears? It is incredibly awkward. It destroys your natural fluidity and it drains your physical energy instantly. If you are starting to see how this geometric trap completely rewrites the rules of clay court tennis, I would love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and tell me if you ever noticed this subtle vertical battle before today, because most casual fans completely miss this specific detail when they watch a match. So the tall player is trapped in a cruel tactical prison. They only have two terrible choices. They can try to hit the heavy ball early on the rise. This requires absolutely perfect hand-eye coordination and creates a massive risk of unforced errors flying into the back fence. Or they can choose the second option and back up. They take 2 or 3 heavy steps behind the baseline to let the ball drop back down into their comfortable waist-high strike zone. But every single time they back up, they surrender valuable court position to Eala. They have to run significantly further to retrieve the next wide shot. The heavy topspin acts like an invisible physical weight, pushing them deeper and deeper into the back fences of the stadium. They are constantly adjusting their massive frames to a ball that simply refuses to stay in their ideal strike zone. When you repeatedly force a giant athlete to hit a heavy ball above their shoulders, you do way more than just ruin their timing and their rhythm. You force their massive muscles to work completely outside their natural mechanical efficiency. You are directly siphoning the oxygen out of their heavy legs with every single brutal rally. They are suffocating in plain sight, and the geometric math is completely against them. When you force a tall player to stretch vertically over and over again, you completely destroy their horizontal speed. To truly witness the biological devastation of this tactical system, we just need to place the third round match at the Italian Open between Eala and Elena Rybakina directly onto the autopsy table. Elena Rybakina is the absolute gold standard of the European power baseline prototype. She is tall and imposing and hits the ball with a flat trajectory that normally punches a hole right through anyone standing across the net. She stepped onto the clay court in Rome expecting a standard baseline shootout. She expected to dictate the tempo with her massive serve and her heavy ground strokes. But Eala did not give her a shootout. She gave her a brutal lesson in applied geometry. If you look at the tactical mapping from that match, you will see a brilliant and ruthless pattern of ball distribution. Eala rarely hit 2 consecutive balls to the same depth or the same angle. She was deliberately scrambling the tracking radar of her opponent. First, she would unleash a short-angled topspin forehand. This ball would land shallow in the service box and bite incredibly hard into the dirt before pulling aggressively wide toward the doubles alley. Rybakina was violently forced to sprint forward and diagonally just to keep the ball in play. You have to understand the pure physics of this movement. A towering athlete carries a significant amount of physical mass. When a body of that size sprints forward on crushed brick, it generates a massive amount of forward momentum. To strike the ball and recover, Rybakina had to hit the brakes. Breaking on a clay court is an incredibly violent physical action. The knees bent heavily and the ankles locked tight to stop the forward slide. The quadriceps absorb an immense amount of shock just to bring the heavy frame to a complete halt. At that exact moment of intense physical exertion, Rybakina was at her absolute most vulnerable. And that is exactly when Eala triggered the second phase of the trap. The moment Rybakina stopped moving forward, Eala sent a deep, heavy topspin moonball high into the backcourt. The ball carried that terrifying Nadal Academy rotational velocity and exploded violently upward near the baseline. Rybakina had to instantly reverse her momentum. She had to push off her tired legs and scramble backward while tracking a ball that was flying rapidly out of her comfortable strike zone. This is not just hitting the ball deep. This is a highly targeted biomechanical attack. When you play a traditional flat hitter, the ball naturally comes towards you. It sits nicely in your strike zone. But when you play Eala, the ball constantly runs away from you or jumps aggressively at your throat. Eala forced the heavy European champion to constantly shift her weight from a forward sprint into a backward scramble while simultaneously dealing with a ball bouncing near her collarbone. The physiological energy cost of this specific movement pattern is truly astronomical. You could physically see the stamina draining from Rybakina with every single extended rally. Her heavy, flat strokes lost their penetrating power because she simply had no legs left to push off the ground. She was swinging entirely from her shoulders, trying to muscle the ball over the net. Her unforced error count naturally skyrocketed. She was breathing heavily and bending over between points while completely broken by a geometric system she could not solve. The heat map from that match does not lie. Eala turned the court into a hamster wheel, forcing massive athletes to navigate the most physically exhausting spatial system possible. The fatal flaw of the European women on the professional clay court circuit is not a lack of technical skill. It is the absolute rigidity of their biomechanics when confronted with a new and alien geometric system. For years, they relied on their towering height and flat power as an unbreakable shield. They built an entire tennis culture around overwhelming force. But Alex Eala proved that a high center of gravity is actually a massive liability against extreme rotational velocity. She took the classic European power game and completely unraveled it using pure math and court geometry. But there is one final piece to this puzzle that traditional television cameras completely fail to capture. It is a tiny detail that only professional coaches notice, but it makes all of this geometric destruction a reality. If you want to know how a player with a smaller frame generates that massive spin, you have to look very closely at her hands. Just milliseconds before the racket face makes contact with the ball, Eala executes a violent microscopic grip shift. Her fingers slide slightly further under the handle of the racket to maximize the brush angle against the back of the yellow ball. This micro-adjustment happens literally in the blink of an eye. It requires elite hand speed and world-class wrist flexibility. The traditional European academies simply do not teach this specific micro-movement because their players do not need it to hit a heavy flat ball. They grip the racket firmly and drive through the back of the ball. Eala snaps her wrist violently upward to create a localized tornado of topspin. By the time the giant European baseliners realize what the ball is going to do, it is already jumping viciously over their shoulders. Eala is not just another promising young player winning a few matches on clay. She is a true tactical disruptor. She has successfully exposed a structural weakness in the way entire nations develop their elite tennis talent. The entire professional tour is now entering a state of tactical crisis. The secret is out. The blueprint to beat the towering European giants on clay is completely out in the open for the entire locker room to see. The illusion of their absolute invincibility is permanently gone. As we move deeper into the final stretch of the 2026 season, the pressure is entirely on the old guard. The hunter has suddenly become the hunted. Will the famous European academies try to change their fundamental coaching philosophies overnight? Will these giants try to learn how to hit heavy topspin themselves, or will they desperately try to shorten the points by rushing the net on a slippery surface? The answers to these urgent questions will completely define the next era of professional tennis. The tactical war has only just begun. How long will it take for the European elite to find a biological antidote to this brutal geometric weapon? To make sure you are right here with us to find out exactly how they adapt, and to never miss a single piece of this unfolding tactical revolution, hit subscribe right now.